Who's actually going to benefit from a chamber vacuum sealer? And who's better off putting their money into a simpler Ziploc system? Is the VEVOR 1200-watt machine a smart purchase for the weekend grill master, the busy meal prep family, or the small-scale caterer? Or is it an overkill that will sit idle in the garage? And does the price really make sense for someone who just wants to keep a few steaks fresh a week longer? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at chamber sealers, the biggest hesitation I felt was do I really need a whole chamber? Most home users only vacuum seal single-serving bags, and a traditional external sealer can handle that. The VEVOR, however, promises a full-size chamber, dual-lock sealing, and the ability to handle wet foods without the mess that typical external units create. That promise sounded great on paper, but the real question was whether those features translate into everyday convenience or just a bigger countertop appliance you'll only use once a month. Let's break down the practical side of using a chamber sealer in a typical kitchen. First off, the vacuum strength is listed at 100 kilopascals, which is enough to pull air out of a bag even when it's filled with liquid marinades or soups. In real-world testing, that means you can pop a bag of chicken thighs in a herb-infused brine, seal it, and the machine will evacuate the air without the bag ballooning or the liquid spilling out. For anyone who likes to sous vide or do bulk marinades, that's a genuine time saver. The dual lock seal function creates two separate sealing lines, so the bag stays airtight even if the first line gets a tiny nick. I tried sealing a half-filled bag of berries, and the second lock held up perfectly when the bag was squeezed in a cooler later that day. The 23.6-inch sealing length is another point that often trips people up. It's long enough to accommodate a whole turkey or a multi-layer batch of pre-portioned meals, yet the overall footprint is still compact enough to sit on a countertop beside a blender. For a family that does weekly batch cooking, you can line up several trays of prepared meals, load them into the chamber, and run a single batch operation. The stable batch operation claim holds up. The machine cycles through the vacuum and seal steps without needing you to hit the button for each bag. That reduces the repetitive hand motion fatigue you get with handheld sealers when you're sealing dozens of bags. Now, who should actually consider buying this? If you're a serious home chef who regularly works with wet ingredients, think marinated meats, soups, or even homemade sauces, the chamber design eliminates the dreaded suckback problem that plagues external sealers. Small food service businesses, like a pop-up bakery or a catering side hustle, also benefit from the ability to seal large trays or multiple bags in one go. The time saved on packaging can add up quickly during a busy service. People who meal prep for the week, freeze bulk portions, or use a sous vide circulator will notice that the extra seal integrity keeps food from freezer burn longer than a regular Ziploc. Conversely, if your sealing needs are occasional, maybe you seal a few leftover salads or a couple of steaks a month, the VEVOR is probably more machinery than you need. A basic external sealer will handle dry items just fine, and you won't have to carve out counter space for a 120-core device. Likewise, if you live in a tiny apartment where every square foot counts, the chamber's size and the need for a stable surface might be a deal breaker. The price point sits higher than typical external units, so the return on investment only makes sense if you're leveraging the wet food capability or the batch processing regularly. A few practical downsides surfaced during my Hansen sessions. The first is noise. The vacuum pump hums louder than a typical countertop blender, which could be intrusive in an open-plan kitchen. It's not a scream, but you'll hear it clearly if you're talking on the phone while the machine runs. Second, the sealing time per bag is a bit longer than a standard sealer. You're looking at roughly 45 seconds to a minute for a full vacuum seal cycle. For high-volume users, that's still faster than manual batch work, but it's something to be aware of if you're trying to seal 100 bags back-to-back. Lastly, the machine requires a dedicated power outlet. The 1200W draw means you can't just plug it into a USB-type charger or a lamp socket. If you're in a rented space with limited outlets, you'll need to plan where it sits. Maintenance is fairly straightforward. The chamber interior is stainless steel and can be wiped down with a damp cloth after each use. The vacuum pump does accumulate some oil residue over time, but the manual indicates a simple oil refill procedure that doesn't need special tools. I did notice that the lid gasket, which creates the airtight seal, can wear out after heavy use. Keeping an eye on that part will prevent leaks that reduce vacuum.